Bonjour mes amis. In this video we're going to be talking about silent sounds, so I really won't be doing that much talking. So the first silent sound that we have in French is the silent H. So the H is always silent in French. It is never, ever, ever pronounced. The only difference is sometimes it's aspirated and sometimes it's unaspirated. But this we'll talk about later on in the course. So for instance, we have the words ok and So notice that I'm not pronouncing them at all. The next silent letter is the S. So whenever you have an S at the end of a word, it is always silent. The exception to this is sometimes the S will link with the word that comes afterwards, and then it gets pronounced as a Z. This is also something we'll talk about in another lesson. But most of the time, you can assume that the S at the end of a word is silent. Just like the S, the E, when it's found at the end of a word, is always silent. The only exception to this is when you listen to French songs, sometimes they'll actually pronounce silent E's just for dramatic effect or to increase the flow of the actual song. The next one is X. Whenever X is found at the end of a word, it is always silent and it acts in the same way as the S. So it will link to the next word afterwards if the next word begins with a vowel, but again, we will go over this in another video. But otherwise, the X is just like the S and it is usually silent at the end of a word. So for instance, we have the word cadeau and dit voiture. Dit voiture. So we don't actually pronounce the X there. Another silent sound in French is the T. Whenever you see a T at the end of a word, it is always silent as well. Like the S and the X, it sometimes gets pronounced with the next word if the next word begins with a vowel, but again, we will cover that in another video. An example of this is the word et, which means and, et, et, and. Those are the main silent sounds that we have in French. There are a lot of silent sounds, but as you start to learn the vocabulary, you'll pick up which sounds are normally pronounced and which sounds aren't. It is one of the more challenging aspects of learning French, is that a lot of the sounds are not pronounced, or they're pronounced in a way that you wouldn't necessarily expect. So use this video as a guide, but also keep in mind that there are lots of other quirks and silent sounds to the French pronunciation. So we'll see you in the next video.